Morning, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am. Morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
ma'am.
morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, children. Good morning. How are all of you?
Good morning, ma'am.
I'm
Good
good.
morning, dear. Good morning. Had lot of holidays, eh? No class. Lot of holidays you had, no biology classes. Not keeping well. We are back to work now, beta. And from today, I'll start posting the questions which I had planned with you earlier. Which was the first chapter of this unit which I had done with you?
Organisms and population.
Organism and population. Organism
Yes.
and
Very
population.
yes. Very few students were attending the classes. Second chapter was
Ecosystem.
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 Very good. Very good. And the third one that we are about to finish today is
Biodiversity and
Biodiversity.
and then we have one more chapter left in this that is very easy, that is environmental issues. So after we complete this unit, another 2-3 days, children, we have completed 14 marks out of 70. But that 14 is not ki haan bhai ho gaya and then it is done. I think I had already told you for those students who were earlier coming that I'll be posting questions, 10, 12 questions every day. Okay?
Yes.
And
Yes,
you
ma'am.
need to be prepared next
Yes,
day when
ma'am.
you come to my class. But for my health issues, I could not start with that process, but I'll be starting with today. This is the last topic for the chapter, Reasons for Conserving Biodiversity. Before I go further, what is biodiversity quickly, children? So what were you doing all these days when you did not have a bio class? Sleeping? Did you
Okay.
study biology?
Yes, ma'am.
Acha, very good. What did you study with chapters? You revised what we did?
Ma'am, this chapter, biodiversity.
Good. Children, there's been a long gap because of this COVID thing. It has consumed around 15 days. So you'll have to really cooperate now. Whatever we have missed out in 15 days, I don't want to rush with the syllabus. But the point is, we need to keep on brushing up with what things have been done. For that, I need your help and cooperation. We will surely have board exams. So please be serious about it. I hope you'll cooperate. What is biodiversity? Jaldi say, tell me.
Variety of flora and fauna found in a geographical area.
Fine. Now we keep on saying we need to conserve biodiversity. We need to conserve biodiversity. What is the reason? We are going to study about the reasons of conserving biodiversity. See, beta, there are many reasons why we need to conserve biodiversity. And we cannot say that one reason is important, the other is not important. All the reasons are very important. But we put them into 3 categories. How many categories for giving the such kind of a question answer? 3 categories. Tell me how many categories?
3.
3.
The first heading is narrowly utilitarian argument. Narrow argument, narrow utilitarian argument. What is utilitarian? What is utilitarian? Anybody in the class? Utilitarian society. We normally use this word when we are describing narrow-minded people. We say, "Arey, this is a utilitarian society." Old trends, old traditions going on, that is utilitarian. So narrow, if you think narrowly about something, you think about the old pattern on the old system only, then this is a narrow utilitarian approach. See, there are many reasons, beta. You know that humans, they get so many things from nature. They get firewood, they get fruits, they get pulses, dyes, perfumes. Everything is important for them. And more than 25% of the drugs which are sold in the market are derived from plants, and 25,000 plant species are used in traditional medicines. So most of the benefit that we are getting, the human beings, utilitarian way, not only we, beta, our parents, our grandparents, unka grandparents, all of them, we are using biodiversity. How are we using biodiversity? We are getting a lot of products from forest. We are getting medicines. How many plant species are used in making medicines? Approximate?
25,000.
25,000 plants.
25,000.
Traditional medicines. I'm talking about traditional. Now that we are using more beta. Biodiversity rich countries expect to reap more benefits from the increasing resources put into bioprospecting. So what do these countries do? Those countries which have a lot of biodiversity, they have a lot of plants. They use these resources for bioprospecting. What is bioprospecting? Understand this word, beta. Exploration of molecular, genetic, and species level diversity for obtaining products of economic importance. We explore, we study, we do a lot of research. At which level? Molecular level, genetic level, and species level. What are the 3 levels of research?
Molecular, genetic, and species.
Yes. And which kind of countries can do this? Those which have a rich what?
Biodiversity.
And then,
Biodiversity.
and then, very good. And then they can get some products which are of economic importance for them. You must have heard about vaccine. These days, the most common word that we come across, we hear every day is vaccine, vaccine. If you know a bit about it, tell me who is manufacturing Covishield?
Serum Institute.
Serum Institute of India. Very good. Who gave this answer? Very good. It is Serum Institute of India. Do you know who owns this Serum Institute of India? Who is the owner of this?
AstraZeneca.
AstraZeneca has given the license. Who is manufacturing in India? Serum Institute of India. Who is the chairman? We are manufacturing.
Adar Poonawalla.
Adar Poonawalla. Very good. Now the Serum Institute is so popular in India, not today, beta. It has come in news because of this COVID-19. Otherwise, it is a very old institute. It's actually run by Adar Poonawalla's father. His name is Cyber Poonawalla. Cyrus, sorry. His name is Cyrus Poonawalla. You know what he did? He was the first person to make vaccine out of horse body. He extracted some antibodies from the bodies of horses and he started making vaccines. This is how the Serum Institute of India started long, long back. These days you've heard about it a lot because it has got license from AstraZeneca and it is making this vaccine for COVID. But it's a very old institute. So how did this person, Cyrus Poonawalla, explore it? If it did not have different varieties of horses, was it possible for this person to make vaccines in India? Was it possible for him? No.
No, ma'am.
He could make because we had different varieties of horses. So he got different antibodies. What he used to normally do is he used to inject a normal antigen any disease causing organism, antibodies used to develop inside the horse's body. And then those antibodies were removed from the body of the horse and they were given as vaccines to different people. So this is how this vaccine market started, and this firm, it became such a big company. It is one of the world's biggest serum institute now. So he could do this because we had biodiversity. And he did the research at what level? Genetic level? Yes or no? Molecular level, genetic level?
Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, without research, doing research at that level of horses, it is not possible, no? So this process is called bioprospecting. Prospects means benefit. Bio means living. So bioprospecting is exploring molecular, genetic, and species level diversity. And why do we do bioprospecting? To obtain what? Products which are of?
Economic importance.
Yes, they're going to give us money. So what kind of an approach is this? This is a very narrow utilitarian argument. Bas apna fayda ho raha hai. So that is why we are trying to save biodiversity. So this is the first logic. What is the heading we had given, children? Very quickly tell me.
Narrow utilitarian argument.
Yes, because we are getting medicines, we can do bioprospecting, we can make money. So we are trying to conserve biodiversity. Second is broadly utilitarian argument. Okay. In this, we say that, okay, it is going to personally benefit us, no doubt, but it plays a major role in ecosystem services that nature provides. For example, we will also talk about the production of oxygen. Amazon forest produces 20% of the total oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere via photosynthesis. All the oxygen which is available these days by photosynthesis, 20% of the total oxygen is coming from which forest?
Amazon.
Amazon.
So this is a broad way. You're getting so many things. You don't have to do anything. See, in the first point, you had to make medicines and you had to do some research. You had to make vaccines. But in the second one, you're doing nothing. This is happening on its own. Nature is giving you on its own. How broad-minded. Look at the second one. Pollination of flowers, without which fruits and seeds are not produced, is provided by pollinator layer, bees, humblebees, birds, bats. Do we tell birds and bees go and do pollination so that flowers can pollinate? Do we need to get into all this?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No,
Do we
ma'am.
need to tell the trees of Amazon forest to do photosynthesis so that we get oxygen?
No, ma'am.
Control of floods and soil erosion. All the trees which grow, automatically they control floods and they stop soil erosion. The last is the intangible benefits of nature, like aesthetic pleasures of watching spring flowers, walking through thick forests, listening to songs of birds. So this is some aesthetic pleasure, divine pleasure, divine happiness which you get from nature. So is nature having a narrow approach when it is giving us, or it is having a broad approach?
Broad approach.
Man had a narrow approach, narrow utilitarian approach. Yes, biodiversity is important because I can make money. Biodiversity is important because we are going to get some things which are of commercial importance to us. But when we talk about the broad approach, we are getting all these things for free. The last one, the third one, is ethical argument. See, beta, every species has an intrinsic value, even if it is not of an economic value to us. It is not always important that everything has an economic value. Supposing your friend gives you a pen, it may cost 5 rupees. So it may not have an economic value, but it certainly has an intrinsic value. Intrinsic value means something which matters a lot to you. Okay, what is this value called as?
Intrinsic
Value.
Intrinsic value.
In many families, you must have seen people preserve things and they say, okay, this is my great great grandfather's pen, or this is my great great grandmother's shawl. So what are all these things? These things do not have any economic value. However, they have which value?
Intrinsic value.
Intrinsic value.
So every species has an intrinsic value. It is not that, okay, this plant is not giving me medicines, this plant is not going to give me money, so this is of no use. No. Even if it does not have economic value, it has an intrinsic value. So it is a moral duty to take care of all these legacies that we are getting from our generations. Plants like tulsi and people have religious importance as well. Some plants people take care because they have some religious feelings associated with it. Mainly which two plants, beta?
Tulsi and people.
Tulsi and people.
Tulsi and people.
So very quickly, Jack, can I just have the headings of the three approaches that we had? The first approach was
Narrowly.
Utilitarian.
Narrowly.
where we just talk about, yes, we are going to make money, we are going to get this, we are going to get that. Second is which approach?
Broadly
Broadly
utilitarian.
utilitarian arguments.
Good. And the last one is the ethical. Ethical means moral argument. Okay, fine. If there is no economic value, there must be an intrinsic value. But we are coming to very important part now. This one. This is very important. Approaches to conserve biodiversity. There are two basic approaches of conserving biodiversity. Very, very important. Like I told you, I'll be discussing 10 years papers also. So you will find that this question comes almost every year. In situ conservation and ex situ conservation. What are the two ways of biodiversity conservation?
In situ and ex situ.
In situ and ex situ.
In situ and ex situ.
Now let's understand what does this in situ and ex situ mean. Okay, let me explain it to you. In situ, on site. What does the word in situ mean?
On site.
On site.
This in situ conservation means you're going to protect the ecosystem, protect your threatened species, but it is not possible to conserve all the biological wealth that you have. You cannot go and preserve the entire world. So we do some things. What do? The first is biodiversity hotspots. This is an approach for in situ method of conservation. Eminent conservationists have identified certain regions. Okay, we identify a certain area that yes, here we have a lot of biodiversity. So let us conserve this. Because we cannot conserve every inch of land in the world. So we identify certain areas. What would be the criteria of selection of these areas, beta? What would be the selection criteria? Supposing in Anshika's garden, I have 100 species. In Ananya's garden, I have 60 species of plant. I want
Number
to
of
make one.
species.
Yes, I want to make a biodiversity hotspot. Which one should I go for?
Anshika.
So we'll see where we have the maximum biodiversity protection. These areas are known as biodiversity hotspots. What are they called?
Biodiversity hotspots.
So these are the areas where we have high level of species richness, high degree of endemism. Endemic species, if you have done in junior classes, species which are found in only a particular area. What are these species called as?
Endemic species.
Endemic species. And this process is known as endemism. What is it called?
Endemism.
Yes, endemism. You cannot have a cactus growing in polar areas. This property is endemism. A species is confined to a region, it is not found anywhere else. And accelerated habitat loss. So beta, we are going to see 3 points. We should have 3 points while selecting hotspots. Number 1, it should have a lot of species richness. Number 2, it should have which kind of species?
Endemic species.
Endemism.
Endemic species.
Because if you're not going to save them here, they're not going to be found anywhere else. So endemism. And third is that the habitat loss. Very soon the habitat is getting spoiled. Initially 25 biodiversity hotspots were identified. And now all over the world, we have how many hotspots?
34.
34.
Why do we call it as an in situ conservation? Because we cannot bring those plants. Supposing I have a hotspot in African jungle. Okay, I say no, I don't want in situ conservation. I want ex situ. In situ means on site. जहाँ पे जो है वहीं पे बचाओ उसको. That is in situ conservation. So what will I do? Can I bring that African endemic species and grow it in my garden?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
So I need to have which kind of a conservation? In situ or ex situ?
In situ.
In situ. So when we selected the hotspots, we kept three things in mind. Number one, that this area has a lot of species richness. A lot of plants are there, a lot of varieties are there. Number two, the endemic nature. And number three is the loss of habitat. Means the natural habitat of that place is getting lost gradually. So we are afraid that this species may become extinct. Tell me very quickly, what are the three features you will keep in mind while you are selecting a place for a hotspot?
Richness, high degree of
Variety
endemic
of species
and
and
Tourism.
habitat.
Yes. Can you tell me how many
habitat.
hotspots? Very good. How many hotspots we have now?
34.
34.
So biological hotspots are put in which conservation? In situ or ex situ?
In situ.
In
In
situ,
situ.
In situ.
What does the word in situ mean?
on site.
On site.
Okay, let's move on to the next one now. The hotspots in India, you've got Western Ghats in Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma, Eastern Himalayas. If all the biodiversity hotspots are put together, they cover even less than 2% of the Earth's land area, but they have a lot of high density. Ongoing mass extinctions could be reduced by 30% through strict protection of these hotspots. How many hotspots did we select in the whole world? Just now we did the
34.
figure.
34.
34.
If we add the area of all these 34 hotspots, it is even less than how much percent of the total land?
2%.
2%.
So we are not even saving how much percent of the biodiversity of the total land, but less than even how much percent?
2%.
2%. 2%.
Very good. But what we are trying to do is we are trying to save at least 30% of the plant species. Land is only less than 2%. But in this 2%, we have almost how many plant species which we are trying to save?
30%.
30%.
Very good. Now we come to the second one, in situ. We are doing in situ or ex situ?
In situ.
In situ.
In situ.
In situ, which was the first one?
Biodiversity.
Biodiversity hotspot.
Richness.
Very good. Now we come to the second one, that is protected areas. The special areas for protection and maintenance of ecologically unique and biodiversity regions. See, when I say protected areas, I mean national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. You know, national parks are government maintained areas. We've got about 90 national parks in India now. They are all reserved for wildlife. Activities like cultivation, grazing, forestry, habitat are not allowed. Can anybody go and do hunting and in national parks?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
National parks in India now?
90.
90.
90. The first one established in India in 1936, Hellies National Park. First national park in India, tell me the name.
Hellies National Park.
Hellies National.
And which year did we make it?
1936.
1936.
Before independence, the Britishers already started this trend of making national parks. Now next is a wildlife sanctuary. They are also small pieces of land. They may have lakes, but here basically animals and fauna can take refuge without being hunted. Their numbers are 448 in India. What is the difference between a national park and a wildlife sanctuary? Anybody guess out?
Ma'am,
National
national parks are for public, but wildlife sanctuaries are not.
Yes, Peter, try what you're saying, tell us. No? See, Peter, national parks, we do not allow human activity at all. Nobody can go for grazing, nobody can cultivate there, nothing can be done. But in wildlife sanctuaries, what we do is we involve the local people, the local villagers of that area in maintaining that particular area. So they are allowed to come They're allowed to come and collect forest products. They can till the land. So this is the main difference between a wildlife sanctuary and a national park. National park is a smaller area, few kilometers. They will not allow. You cannot just go inside a national park and say, I want to do agriculture over here. They will not let you. I want to cut trees over here. They will not allow. You cannot buy land over there. But wildlife sanctuaries, they are a little different. How many wildlife sanctuaries in India?
448.
448.
Have you ever visited a wildlife sanctuary or a national park? Anybody? Any national park or any sanctuary?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me which one.
Ma'am, Jim Corbett.
Yes, I think everybody from the school trip we had gone to Jim Corbett. Jim Corbett is national park or wildlife sanctuary?
National park.
National Park.
National Park.
National Park.
So can you stay inside Jim Corbett and say, okay, I'm going to do agriculture over here. I'm going to buy land over here.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Not possible. Very good. Now just listen to this wildlife sanctuary. Activities like collection of forest products, harvesting of timber, private ownership of land, tilling of land are all allowed over here. This is allowed. Wildlife sanctuaries allowed. Only hunting and all is not allowed, but otherwise you can buy a piece of land over there. You can make your small house over there if you want. That's absolutely okay in wildlife sanctuaries, because wildlife sanctuaries include large areas compared to national parks. So we were talking about protected areas, two main protected areas, national parks and
Wildlife Center.
we were doing which conservation, ex situ or in situ?
In situ.
In situ.
In situ, which was the first category we did?
Biodiversity hotspots.
Very good, very good. How many biodiversity hotspots in the world?
34.
How much % of land are we able to protect by biodiversity hotspots?
Less than 2%.
Good. Second category of in situ is protected areas. In protected areas, again, we have two categories. What are they?
National parks and
National
wildlife
Park and
sanctuary.
Wildlife Sanctuary.
How many national parks in India?
90.
90.
In India.
Which was the first one and which year was it made?
Delhi's National Park, 1936.
National Park.
National Park 1936.
What is the difference between a wildlife sanctuary and a national park?
Human activities are not allowed in national parks.
are not allowed.
Very good. In national parks. How many wildlife sanctuaries?
448.
448.
Look at the third one. This is a little confusing. Biosphere reserves. Again, an in situ conservation. These are large tracts of protected land with multiple use, preserving the diversity of ecosystem by protecting. See, what are the multiple uses we are doing of this land? We are going to protect the wildlife. We are also going to protect the lifestyles of tribals, plants, animals, genetic resources. They have been made under MAB plan. MAB, Man and Biosphere. What does MAB stand for?
Man
Man
and
and
biosphere.
biosphere.
Means man will also survive and biosphere will also survive together. This program of UNESCO is called as, what program is it called? MAB program. What does MAB program mean?
Man and biosphere.
Yes. There are 14 biosphere reserves in India. Better understand this. A biosphere reserve consists of 3 zones. Can you see the inner area? This is called core area. Nobody can come here. No humans can come here. See the central area. What is the central area called?
Core
Core
area.
area.
Core area.
Core area. Only animals can live here. Man is not allowed to enter over here at all. Then you find this middle area. This is known as buffer zone. What is it called?
Buffer zone.
Buffer zone.
Buffer zone.
Yes, here man can come for his activities. For example, to collect some forest products or to bring the cattle for grazing or something, they can come. This middle area is known as buffer zone. And the last one is the transition zone. Transition zone, you basically have human settlements, small villages. If you can see, what are these? These are human settlements. Such a program is known as which program? MAB program. What does MAB stand for?
Man and biosphere.
Man and biosphere.
This program was started by whom?
UNESCO.
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 Yes. It started in 1971, but in India it came very late. It came somewhere in 1986. This program, it came in India in which year?
1986.
1986.
So we study, in this we study how human interference can cause pollution, how it affects our conservation strategies and all. So this is just an experiment based to understand if man and biosphere try to live together, what will be the effect on the biotic and abiotic environment. So this is biosphere reserve. This is the third in situ mode of conservation. Which was the first one?
Biodiversity hotspots.
Okay. Second one?
Protected areas.
Protected areas.
Third one?
Biosphere reserve.
Biosphere reserve.
Name the 3 zones of biosphere reserve starting from the center. Which is this called?
Core area.
Core area.
And this middle one?
Buffer zone.
Buffer zone.
And the last one?
Transition zone.
Transition zone.
We generally have 1 marker questions from this, like human settlements are found in which zone? Okay, so what will be
Transition zone.
human beings are not allowed to enter which zone?
Core.
Core area.
Very good. The MAB program was launched under, who started this program?
UNESCO.
UNESCO.
UNESCO. We are trying to complete the in situ sites today. 4th is sacred groves. Small groups of forests with special religious importance. Some mythology, some religious importance is there. These are in undisturbed forest without any human interventions. And because humans are not going there, you have a lot of rare and endangered species still surviving over there. Why are these species surviving? Because who is not entering here? They are which kind of forest?
Humans.
They are undisturbed forests. For example, sacred groves are found in Khasi and Jaintia hills in Meghalaya, Aravalli hills of Rajasthan, Western Ghats, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Sarguja, Chada, Bastar areas of Madhya Pradesh. Now, these areas are considered to be very religious by the people. So the people, they themselves protect them. The native people, the local people, they protect them. In Meghalaya, the sacred groves are the last refuges for a large number of rare and threatened plants. Very rare species you will find in the sacred groves of which area? Meghalaya. Why do you think we still have so rare species surviving there?
Because the native
Ma'am, because the local people are protecting them.
Yes. Like in India also, you see somebody cuts a peepal tree or a tulsi tree. People say, oh, you should not have done this. This is not to be done. Because we consider them as sacred. People themselves protect. No government interference is needed over here. So the 4th in situ conservation is sacred groves. The 5th one, come to the last one. This is Ramsar sites. Please pronounce this word. 5th last one, last in situ conservation.
Ramsar sites.
The site.
These are wetlands. Wetland means lot of rainfall, lot of water. Designated as internationally important under the Convention on Wetlands held at Ramsar, Iran in 1971 for the use of wetlands. So there was a conference which was held in Iran. The place name is Ramsar. What was the name of the place at Iran we are talking about?
Ramsar.
Yes. When was this conference held? Which year?
1971.
1971.
This conference was mainly held to conserve the wetland areas. So this meeting was also known as the Ramsar Convention. It was discussed that how to wisely use the wetlands. The maintenance of the ecological character achieved through the implementation of ecosystem approaches within the context of sustainable development. Means we are going to use them for sustainable development. Sustainable development means using them in such a way that we can even save it for the future generations. So it was decided because a lot of people were destroying these wetlands. This convention came up, which is called Ramsar Convention. You can use these for which kind of developments?
Sustainable development.
Sustainable.
Yes, but we need to follow ecosystem approaches. Matlab, we also need to preserve our ecosystem. It means the wise use of wetlands and their resources for the benefit of humankind. If I say in simple words, there are 26 Ramsar sites in India. See, Kerala, you have one wetland that is Ashtamudi. It's a very famous place. People go there. Ashtamudi wetland in Kerala, Sambar Lake in Rajasthan, Chilka Lake in Odisha, Renuka wetland in Himachal Pradesh. These all sites are known as which sites?
Ramsar sites.
Because they're all wetland areas. Lot of rain comes and the land is very fertile. So basically, they are for the benefit of the humans. So how many kinds of in situ conservation have we discussed, the main headings? First one was?
Biodiversity hotspot.
Biodiversity
Yes.
hotspot.
Very good. Second one was?
Protected areas.
Protected areas, again we had two categories. What were they?
Park and wildlife.
National parks and wildlife sanctuary.
The third one is?
Biosphere reserves.
What were the three zones in biosphere reserves?
Core area, buffer zone,
Buffer
transition zone.
zone and transition zone.
What is the full form of MAB program?
Man in biosphere.
Good. The fourth one is?
Sacred groves.
And the last ones are which sites?
Ramsar sites.
Site.
So these are the 5 in situ conservations. Ex situ means placing of certain animals in special care units. Off-site collections. We take them from the original places, we keep them somewhere else. This is off-situ conservation or ex-situ. It is done by wild and domesticated species in botanical gardens, zoological parks, wildlife. Okay. Now, how many botanical gardens? Basically, now these figures have all changed also. You should look out for latest figures, Vika. Please read what is a seed bank very quickly. Something very important. Only 2 points are there, seed banks. Read quickly what is a seed bank. Beta, what are seed banks? See, storage of different genetic strains of commercially important plants in the form of seeds. This is ex situ approach. We are not saving the plant. What are we saving? Seeds. What are we going to store with them? Seeds. We are going to keep the seeds safely of all the endangered plants at one place. Like all your valuables you keep in a bank. So similarly, when we keep all the valuable seeds at one place safely, valuable means all the commercially important plants, then these banks are known as seed banks. Tissue culture, I'm sure you've done in class 10th. Tissue culture is used to make clones of a plant. Micropropagation method. You remember we take a small one plant and then it converts into many plants. Tissue culture. So this has been used for some endangered species of banana and potatoes, not the common banana and potato. And the last one, the most important, is cryopreservation. This is very important, beta.